Here's the truth you've been avoiding. Your biggest enemy isn't out there. It's the quiet deal you make with yourself when no one's watching. You promise progress tomorrow, and tomorrow keeps winning. You call it being realistic, I call it surrender dressed in reason. You're not short on talent. You're leaking power through tiny habits that feel harmless. One more scroll, one more delay, one more story that lets you off the hook. Meanwhile, your potential files a complaint, unused. I'm not here to pat you on the back, I'm here to flip the table. Because if you don't name the forces that keep you average, they will keep you obedient. And once you see them, you won't tolerate them another day. Stay with me in the next breath. I'll expose them and show you how to break their grip. Progress has enemies, but they don't live in the outside world. They live in your thoughts, your routines, your quiet moments of hesitation. You can't fight what you don't see, and that's why most people lose. They think the problem is the economy, their boss, or bad luck. But life rarely defeats anyone from the outside. It starts with a whisper inside the mind, one that says, maybe later. And from that single delay, decay begins. You see, the mind is a battlefield. On one side, there's the builder, the voice that says, let's rise, let's create, let's stretch. On the other side, there's the saboteur, the one that says, take it easy. You've done enough. These two forces live within every person, and whichever one you feed becomes the architect of your future. Here's the truth. Progress doesn't get stolen, it gets surrendered, bit by bit. A skipped day here, a postponed goal there, and before you know it, 5 years have passed and the dream is still sitting on the shelf collecting dust. Not because you lack the ability, but because you allowed your mind to negotiate your standards downward. Progress must be protected daily. If you don't guard it, the enemies move in silently. They don't wear masks of evil. They wear masks of logic, comfort, and caution. They don't break down the door. They slip through the cracks of your reasoning. They whisper things like, be practical. Wait until the time is right. You deserve a break. And while they sound gentle, they are thieves in disguise, stealing your focus, your energy, and your fire. I've seen it too many times. People with enormous potential, strong will, good hearts, and yet they drift. They don't collapse in one day. They drift in small, invisible ways until their standards sink below their potential, and they call it maturity. But it's not maturity, it's slow surrender. Let me tell you something that will change how you see everything. The real fight isn't between rich and poor or lucky and unlucky. It's between discipline and drift. Every single day, you're voting for one side or the other. Every decision, every choice, every small act is a vote for progress or a vote for comfort. The problem isn't the system. It's not the boss, the market, or the competition. It's the pattern, the mental training that prefers retreat over rise, comfort over confrontation, and distraction over discipline. And until you break that internal pattern, you'll keep finding yourself circling the same mountains year after year, wondering why your results haven't changed. The external world is only a mirror of the internal one. Nothing outside can fix what's broken inside. You can't fix a weak mindset with a new opportunity. You can't patch over procrastination with motivation. Change begins within, or it doesn't begin at all. Think of your progress like a garden. It doesn't grow by accident. It's designed, cultivated, watered, and protected. A gardener doesn't blame the weather, he tends to the soil. And when weeds appear, he doesn't complain, he pulls them out. The same goes for your growth. If the weeds of neglect and excuse start to take root, pull them fast. So, ask yourself honestly, who's winning the war inside your mind? The disciplined builder or the drifting saboteur? The visionary who moves with purpose or the voice that finds a reason to wait? Progress begins the moment you answer that question with brutal honesty. Not when conditions improve, not when the timing feels perfect, but when you decide once and for all that internal resistance will no longer have the final vote. That's the turning point. That's when everything begins to shift. Because progress isn't a one-time event, it's a defense strategy against decline. Every day you fight for it, you grow stronger. Every day you ignore it, you lose ground. So if your growth has been inconsistent, if progress has come and gone like a tide, it's not because life got harder. It's because the enemies got smarter and quieter. They've learned to hide behind logic, behind I'm tired, behind I'll start Monday. But you can outthink them. You can see them for what they are, resistance in disguise. The first step to winning this war is awareness. You have to see the battle for what it truly is. This isn't about talent or opportunity, it's about discipline versus drift. Because success doesn't belong to the smartest or the luckiest. It belongs to the ones who show up every day, guard their habits, and refuse to let small excuses become permanent walls. You can't win tomorrow's battles with yesterday's mindset. You can't live a disciplined life with a drifting philosophy. And you can't protect progress if you keep letting comfort speak louder than purpose. The first enemy of progress is already waiting at your doorstep. It's dressed like a friend, it speaks softly, and it sounds reasonable. But don't be fooled. This one has destroyed more dreams than failure ever could. It's the master manipulator, the thief of momentum, the voice that says, I can't, because it's the first and most dangerous enemy. Excuses. Excuses are clever. They never shout, they reason. They wear the voice of logic, the tone of self-compassion, the disguise of patience. They tell you stories that sound intelligent, comforting, and even justified. It's not the right time. I don't have the resources. I'm not ready yet. Others have it easier, and yet behind every excuse is a quiet truth you're afraid to face. You could move, but you choose not to. Excuses are the most elegant form of retreat. They allow you to feel smart while standing still. They are the sugar that makes procrastination taste sweet. Every person who's fallen short has had an excellent story to explain why. Too busy, too early, too late, too risky. But the world doesn't pay for reasons, it pays for results. Let me tell you something that will sting before it saves you. Your excuses don't make you unique. They make you ordinary. Every person who settles has the same list. The difference between those who move forward and those who remain stuck isn't circumstance, it's language. The achiever says, how can I? While the drifter says, I can't because. That small shift in vocabulary changes the direction of a life. Here's why. I can't shuts down the mind. It slams the door on creativity and initiative, but how can I sends the mind searching. It opens up pathways. It turns fear into strategy and limitation into curiosity. One question fuels your growth. The other protects your comfort. Excuses are seductive because they offer safety. They make you feel like you're protecting yourself from failure, but the truth is they're not protecting you, they're imprisoning you. They give you the illusion of safety while quietly stealing your potential. You don't lose years through catastrophe, you lose them through justification. I once met two men, same background, same struggles, same economy. One said, I'd succeed if life weren't so unfair. The other said, I can't afford not to succeed. Same soil, different roots. The difference wasn't opportunity, it was ownership. One blamed circumstances, the other took command. Excuses are like weeds in the garden of potential, they grow naturally. You don't have to plant them, you just have to neglect discipline and they'll appear. If you don't challenge them daily, they'll multiply until they choke the life out of your vision. The cure isn't inspiration, it's accountability. Because accountability exposes excuses to light, and excuses can't survive in light. The moment you start measuring progress by results instead of reasoning, the fog begins to clear. You start to see how much of your story was just self-preservation disguised as logic. Let me tell you something powerful. When you run out of excuses, you run into progress. When there's no one left to blame, when no story remains to hide behind, something miraculous happens, you move. You take action. You make decisions. You build momentum. The mind is brilliant at self-deception. It can justify inactivity for years. It can make you feel like you're working when you're only waiting. I'm preparing. I'm planning. I'm getting ready. Preparation has its place, but too much of it becomes the most subtle excuse of all. The truth is you don't need to be ready. You need to be willing. And here's another truth. The market doesn't pay you for intention. It pays you for execution. The gym doesn't reward you for thinking about exercise. Your body changes because you move. Your relationships don't deepen because you mean to connect. They grow because you do. Every excuse you repeat becomes stronger. Every time you defend your limitations, you feed them. You rehearse failure until it becomes part of your identity. That's why the first step to freedom is silence. Silence the story. Stop explaining. Just act. I've met countless people who could have achieved greatness, but they fell in love with their reasons. They built altars to their excuses and called it wisdom. They mistook caution for intelligence. But wisdom doesn't mean waiting forever. It means acting with awareness. There's a difference between being prepared and being paralyzed. Comfort loves to wear the costume of logic. It whispers, be realistic. But let me remind you, every breakthrough in history was born from someone unrealistic enough to try. Here's a question to ask yourself tonight. What's the story I keep telling that keeps me small? Is it, I'm too old, too young, too busy, too late? Whatever it is, say it out loud. Then strip it of its power by asking, what can I do despite this? That single change in vocabulary can rewrite your destiny. The greatest tragedy isn't failure, it's the story that prevents you from ever trying. You see, excuses are attractive because they come with sympathy. People nod when you share them. They agree with your reasons. But life doesn't reward sympathy, it rewards courage. The market, the world, and even your own spirit respond to results, not explanations. So, from this day forward, make a pact with yourself. No more excuses. Replace them with questions. Replace I can't with how can I? Replace maybe later with why not now? Every time you hear the voice of retreat, interrupt it with the language of progress. Because comfort disguised as logic will keep you standing still. And logic without motion is paralysis. You can't rationalize your way to success. You can only act your way there. Excuses give you reasons to stay still. Progress gives you reasons to move, and movement is life itself. So, if progress is what you seek, silence the stories and let your results do the talking. Now, if excuses are the first enemy of progress, the second one is quieter, more patient. It doesn't challenge you directly, it simply waits until you look away. It's not loud like failure, it's invisible like dust. And before you know it, it covers everything you once cared for. The second enemy is neglect. Neglect doesn't knock on your door. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It hides in the small decisions you brush aside, the call you'll return tomorrow, the workout you'll skip just this once, the dream you'll chase when things settle down, and by the time you notice, neglect has already built a quiet empire in your life, one small delay at a time. Here's the truth. Progress doesn't collapse in a single day, it erodes. Like rust on iron, neglect spreads quietly until the structure gives way. The tragedy is that neglect never feels dangerous at first. It feels harmless. It's just one day. It's just one detail. But one day becomes two. Two become a week becomes a pattern, and a pattern becomes identity. Success has rhythm. Discipline creates that rhythm, and neglect breaks it. It's easier to start than to sustain. Anyone can light a fire, but it takes focus to keep feeding it when the excitement fades. That's where most people lose. Not because they can't begin, but because they can't maintain. Neglect begins in corners. The areas of life you assume will take care of themselves. The business that once had your attention now runs on autopilot. The relationship you once nurtured now runs on assumption. The health you once protected now sits on the back burner. And the irony, you don't notice the decline until it's too late. Let me give you a picture. A garden left unwatered doesn't die overnight, it wilts slowly. The leaves fade, the soil hardens, and before long, what was once beautiful becomes barren. The same principle applies to your goals, your habits, your growth. Whatever you stop tending will deteriorate. There is no such thing as maintenance without attention. The rent for success is due every day, and you cannot pay it in advance. You can't buy 5 days of discipline on Monday and expect it to carry you through Friday. Life doesn't work that way. Consistency is the price of momentum. Here's a lesson I had to learn the hard way. Catching up is twice as hard as keeping up. It's easier to maintain a good habit than to rebuild it. It's easier to stay in motion than to restart after stalling. When you stop showing up, inertia takes over. And inertia is the silent thief of progress. It demands more energy to restart than it ever did to continue. Neglect wears the face of good intentions. It whispers, you've earned a break. And yes, you have. Rest is necessary, but rest is not retreat. Recovery should renew you, not remove you. When rest becomes routine, it's no longer rest, it's regression. Think about this. Every area of your life left unattended will deteriorate. Health declines without exercise. Wealth shrinks without management. Relationships fade without gratitude. Skills weaken without practice. Even your mindset loses sharpness without reflection. Neglect isn't passive, it's corrosive. I once knew a man who built a thriving business through pure consistency. 10 years of early mornings, steady improvements, and careful habits. Then success arrived, and with it came comfort. I've made it, he thought. He stopped reviewing, stopped refining, stopped paying attention. Within 2 years, what took a decade to build began to crumble. Not because he failed, but because he neglected. That's the hidden danger. Neglect doesn't feel like failure, it feels like relief. And relief is addictive. The moment you tell yourself, I can ease up, the decay begins. You think you're pausing progress, but you're actually reversing it. Progress is like fire. It doesn't demand you rebuild it every day, but it does require you to feed it. Miss a day and the embers cool, miss a few more and the flame dies. That's the law of maintenance. What you don't feed, you lose. Neglect doesn't ask for permission. It slips in when you stop inspecting. That's why awareness is everything. The disciplined person doesn't wait for disaster. They catch decline at the first sign. They don't let small cracks become structural breaks. They fix things early. They water the garden daily, even when it's still green. If you want to measure your commitment, look at the small things, how you handle the details when no one's watching. Because neglect always begins in the details. A missed thank you, a postponed goal review, a skipped reflection. The difference between mediocrity and mastery is how quickly you correct what drifts. Neglect multiplies faster than effort ever could. One missed day doesn't stay alone, it invites friends. Just this once becomes a mantra, and before long, mediocrity becomes a lifestyle defended by logic. People will tell you they're just taking it easy. But what they're really doing is letting neglect disguise itself as balance. Here's the truth you must accept. Progress is fragile. It demands vigilance. You can't coast uphill. If you're not moving forward, you're sliding backward. And the steeper your goals, the faster that slide happens. So, defend your progress like it's treasure, because it is. Check your systems, guard your habits, audit your focus. Don't wait until the damage is visible to start repairing. Remember, it's not about how much you can do. It's about how long you can keep doing what matters. The small disciplines done consistently will always outperform the grand gestures done occasionally. If the first enemy of progress is excuses and the second is neglect, the third one is trickier. It doesn't attack your schedule, it attacks your confidence. It doesn't steal your time, it steals your courage. And once it gets inside your mind, even your best ideas begin to stall. The third enemy is doubt. Doubt is subtle. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It never kicks down the door, it seeps through the cracks of uncertainty. You won't hear it at first. It arrives quietly, disguised as logic, caution, or being realistic. And before you know it, it's built a small home inside your mind, rearranging the furniture of your beliefs. It starts when your results take longer than you expected, when your work goes unnoticed, when you give your best effort and see little return. That's when doubt begins its work. It whispers, maybe it's not for you. Maybe you're not ready. Maybe you've overreached. And if you listen long enough, your belief starts to shrink. Action slows. Confidence fades. But here's the truth. Doubt doesn't come because something is wrong. It comes because something important is happening. Resistance only appears when progress begins to matter. A small dream doesn't attract much opposition. But the moment you decide to build something meaningful, life tests you. It wants to know if you're serious. Faith and doubt live in the same house, but only one gets to drive. Doubt paralyzes. Faith propels. Doubt says, wait until you're certain. Faith says, move while uncertain. And that difference determines whether your vision becomes real or stays imaginary. People love to say, I'll believe it when I see it, but that's not how growth works. Builders, creators, dreamers, they see it because they first believe it. The mind must travel ahead of the body or the body will never move. Belief is the blueprint. Action is the construction. A farmer doesn't wait for proof before planting. He puts seeds in the soil with no visible guarantee. Why? Because he understands a deeper law. The evidence always follows the effort. You plant first. You water daily. You trust the unseen process. That's faith. Doubt loves delay. It convinces you to analyze instead of act, to question instead of test, to hesitate until the moment passes. And while you're thinking about what could go wrong, someone else is already discovering what could go right. Let me tell you something I've learned. The cure for doubt isn't more information, it's disciplined action. Action creates evidence, and evidence kills doubt. You don't think your way into confidence, you act your way there. Each small victory adds another layer of proof that belief wasn't misplaced. I've met countless people who wait for the perfect time, the perfect feeling, the perfect sign. But perfection is the twin brother of doubt. It never arrives. You will never feel completely ready. The conditions will never be flawless. The longer you wait for certainty, the smaller your courage becomes. Doubt doesn't just live in fear. It lives in overthinking. It takes your energy and turns it into motionless analysis. You become a philosopher of your own hesitation. You start to study success instead of practicing it. You watch others do what you were meant to do. And that's how doubt wins, not by destroying your ability, but by freezing it. Think about this. Every act of faith builds muscle. Every disciplined action is a deposit into your confidence account. When you show up despite not feeling ready, you build strength no book, no speech, no seminar could ever give you. That's how you build an unshakable mind, not by removing fear, but by learning to move through it. Let me paint a picture for you. There's a bridge you need to cross. It's foggy, uncertain, and you can't see the other side. Doubt tells you to wait until the fog clears. Faith tells you to start walking anyway. And as you walk step by step, the fog begins to lift, not because it disappeared, but because you moved. That's how belief works. It clears the way through motion, not waiting. The mind gains clarity from experience, not hesitation. When a person gives in to doubt, progress stops not because the goal was impossible, but because the dreamer surrendered belief. When you let doubt sit in the driver's seat, every opportunity starts to look like a risk. Every risk starts to look like danger. And soon you've convinced yourself that safety is wisdom. But wisdom without motion is wasted potential. Remember this, courage isn't the absence of doubt, it's mastery over it. You'll never completely silence the voice of uncertainty, but you can turn down its volume by acting faster than it speaks. Each time you move forward in faith, doubt loses a little ground. It becomes quieter, weaker, smaller. And one day you'll wake up realizing that the same voice that used to stop you now barely whispers in the distance. That's the beauty of disciplined belief. It turns fear into feedback. Every mistake becomes data, not defeat. Every delay becomes adjustment, not abandonment. You stop fearing failure because you've proven that progress doesn't depend on perfect confidence. It depends on consistent motion. You'll never eliminate doubt, but you can outgrow it. The key is to keep your feet moving when your mind wants to pause. Because here's the truth. Progress doesn't wait for belief to be absolute. Progress rewards those who build while they're still uncertain. And once you conquer doubt, another enemy waits for you, one that's louder, faster, and far more seductive. It doesn't challenge your belief. It fractures your attention. It doesn't make you quit. It just keeps you busy. The fourth enemy of progress is distraction. Distraction is the most modern of all enemies and perhaps the most dangerous. It doesn't confront you directly. It seduces you quietly. It steals not through destruction, but through division. It doesn't ask for your energy, it scatters it. It doesn't demand your surrender, it earns it. One notification, one scroll, one I'll just check real quick at a time. We live in an age where attention is the new gold, and everyone is trying to mine yours. Every sound, every alert, every flashing icon on your screen is designed to hijack your focus. You think you're making choices, but most days your choices are being made for you by algorithms, by habits, by impulses. And when attention fragments, so does progress. Here's the truth. Distraction doesn't make you lazy, it makes you shallow. It pulls you wide instead of deep. You end up doing many things halfway instead of one thing wholeheartedly. You don't fail dramatically, you drift subtly. You mistake activity for achievement, movement for momentum, and by the time you realize it, your energy has been spent chasing everything except what matters. You can't build a masterpiece with a divided mind. Every great achievement was born from focus, uninterrupted, undistracted, unbroken focus. Distraction, however, convinces you that variety is progress. It tells you to try everything, taste everything, dabble in everything, but in the end, you stretch yourself so thin that no seed ever takes root. Let me give you an image. Imagine pouring water across a field filled with cracks. No matter how much you pour, the water seeps away. But if you take that same water and direct it into one narrow trench, it becomes a river, and a river cuts through mountains. That's the difference between a distracted person and a focused one. Same energy, different direction. Most people don't lose because they lack talent or opportunity. They lose because they lack concentration. They start something, feel the spark of excitement, and then the next shiny thing calls for their attention. They scroll, they check, they drift. They never stay long enough for their roots to grow deep. They confuse stimulation with satisfaction. And here's the subtle trap. Distraction disguises itself as productivity. It says you're working, you're learning, you're researching. But if your attention is constantly fragmented, you're not progressing, you're circling. The motion feels like momentum, but it's just noise. Progress requires the courage to say no to the irrelevant, the urgent but unimportant, the noise disguised as necessity. Every yes you give without discernment costs you a piece of your future. Attention is a currency. Spend it wisely. Every moment of focus you invest builds equity in your growth. Every moment of distraction is a withdrawal from your potential. The most successful people you'll ever meet share one common trait. They guard their attention like treasure. They treat their focus as sacred territory. They say no more often than they say yes, not because they're arrogant, but because they understand that progress dies in overcrowded schedules. You must become the gatekeeper of your focus. Design your environment so that distraction has nowhere to live. If your phone is the enemy, turn it off. If your workspace tempts you, simplify it. Don't rely on willpower. It's weak against design. Build systems that make distraction inconvenient and focus automatic. Ask yourself this: what has my attention lately? Because what has your attention has your life. The half-read books, the unfinished projects, the goals that fade after a week, those are the footprints of distraction. Each one is a reminder that the battle for focus is never over. Every time you pick up the phone instead of the pen, every time you open the screen instead of your journal, every time you react instead of create, you are casting a vote. One vote for noise, one vote for meaning. Distraction doesn't destroy your dreams in one blow, it dissolves them slowly. It drains your power by splitting it into 1,000 directions. You can't master anything while being pulled by everything. So you must decide. Do you want to be busy or do you want to be brilliant? Because you can't be both. Depth is the new power. The shallow will always look busy. They'll have meetings, messages, notifications, but they'll rarely move the needle. Depth requires solitude, silence, patience. It demands that you hold your gaze when everyone else is looking away. Guard your focus like your life depends on it, because it does. Your destiny cannot bloom in a distracted mind. Your best work cannot come from a scattered soul. Progress only lives where focus is protected. And that brings us to the most seductive enemy of all, the one that doesn't fight your focus but lulls it to sleep. The one that feels safe, deserved, and even earned. The enemy that sounds like peace but ends in stagnation. The fifth and final enemy of progress is comfort. Comfort is the sweetest poison you'll ever taste. It arrives with soft words and warm hands. It tells you you've earned the right to slow down, that you've done enough, that you deserve ease. And maybe you do for a moment. But if you stay there too long, that comfort becomes a cage, padded, pleasant, and utterly paralyzing. Comfort doesn't ask you to quit your dreams. It simply suggests you delay them. It doesn't destroy ambition. It sedates it. It tells you that good enough is a noble place to rest, that striving is exhausting, and that peace means avoidance. But make no mistake, progress cannot live where comfort rules, because comfort and growth are eternal rivals. One pushes forward, the other settles. I've watched entire lives get trapped in that quiet exchange. A man once hungry to build something great starts saying, I'm fine where I am. A woman once fierce with vision starts saying, maybe I should slow down. Little by little, the fire dims, not because the dream died, but because comfort turned down the heat. The greatest danger of comfort is that it makes you forget how strong you are. It replaces ambition with acceptance. It convinces you that peace and purpose are the same thing. But peace without progress is just disguised decay. Growth only lives in tension, the stretch between where you are and where you could be. Every form of progress, whether it's physical, mental, financial, or spiritual, is born from resistance. Muscles grow because they're strained. Skills sharpen because they're tested. Character strengthens because it's challenged. Comfort removes the resistance, and with it, the reward. People often say, I just want balance. But balance without growth is stagnation. The purpose of rest is renewal, not retreat. The purpose of ease is recovery, not retirement. Rest must serve the mission, not replace it. Let me tell you something honest. Comfort feels good now, but costs you later. Growth costs you now, but pays you forever. That's the trade. The comfortable path leads to regret. The disciplined path leads to pride. Every comfort zone has a price tag, and it's always labeled the same. Unfulfilled potential. The dreams you never chase, the skills you never refine, the strength you never test, all of them fade quietly in the warm glow of I'm fine. Comfort is deceptive because it doesn't feel wrong, it feels earned. You work hard, you achieve something, and then you start to protect what you've built instead of expanding it. You move from pursuit to preservation, but preservation has never produced greatness. You can't defend your way into destiny. Progress depends on forward motion, not maintenance. Life doesn't reward the one who finds a soft place to rest. It rewards the one who keeps leaning forward 1 inch past easy. If you ever catch yourself saying, I'm comfortable, stop and listen closely. That's not peace speaking, it's decline in disguise. The moment you stop chasing improvement, you start inviting erosion. Growth doesn't need you to be in chaos, it just needs you to keep moving. Comfort doesn't start as the enemy. It becomes one when it overstays its welcome. Rest if you must, but don't unpack there. Take the lesson, the gratitude, the renewal, then rise again. Because when comfort becomes your standard, mediocrity becomes your ceiling. And if you ever doubt that, look at nature itself. Everything alive is either growing or decaying. There's no standing still. The same law governs you. You're either advancing or retreating, expanding or contracting, rising or rusting. The illusion of staying the same is just decline delayed. You don't need to live in constant struggle to grow, but you must live in constant pursuit. The edge of comfort is the entrance to expansion. That's where life gets bigger, richer, deeper. That's where purpose replaces pleasure, where meaning outlives ease. So when comfort calls, and it will thank it for the rest, but don't build your home there. Rest if you must, but rise again, because comfort is temporary pleasure. Progress is lasting pride. Now, you've met all 5 enemies: excuses, neglect, doubt, distraction, and comfort. But awareness alone isn't enough. Knowing the enemies doesn't win the war. You must build the defense. And that defense is discipline, awareness, and design, the unbreakable trinity of progress. Awareness is your first weapon. You cannot defeat what you cannot see. The moment you recognize an enemy, you weaken it. Excuses thrive in darkness, neglect hides in ignorance, doubt grows in uncertainty, distraction feeds on unawareness, and comfort breeds in routine. But when you bring them into the light, when you name them, they begin to lose their power. Awareness is like turning on the lights in a room you thought was haunted. Suddenly you see that the monsters were only shadows, fears projected by your own inaction. Once you know the truth, the fear dissolves. But awareness alone isn't enough. Knowing what's wrong doesn't make it right. Awareness must be followed by discipline. Discipline is the bridge between intention and transformation. It's doing what should be done, especially when you don't feel like it. Emotion makes promises, but discipline keeps them. Motivation gets you started, but discipline keeps you moving. It's not glamorous, it's not dramatic, but it's undefeated. Discipline says, I don't need to feel ready to act. It shows up in the cold, the tired, the uncertain moments. It turns repetition into mastery. It takes chaos and creates order. It makes consistency possible and progress inevitable. And yet discipline is fragile when it depends only on willpower. That's why the third element matters: design. You must design your environment, your habits, and your systems so that success becomes natural and neglect becomes difficult. Willpower fades, but structure endures. If you want to wake up early, design your night before. If you want to stay focused, remove what competes for your attention. If you want to stay accountable, track your progress. What you measure improves because attention fuels growth. Don't rely on mood, rely on method. Build systems that carry you when your feelings falter. Because the truth is, the people who appear most disciplined aren't stronger than you, they're just better designed. They've built a world around their goals. They've made the right actions easier and the wrong ones harder. Progress is not an accident, it's engineered. Each morning is a reset, another vote for progress over drift. You can choose to feed your enemies excuses, neglect, doubt, distraction, comfort, or you can feed your defenses awareness, discipline, and design. Every day, the choice returns, and every day, your decisions cast your future. The mind is a garden. Whatever you plant grows. If you plant excuses, you harvest regret. If you plant focus, you harvest progress. Awareness is the gardener, discipline is the water, and design is the fence that keeps the weeds out. And here's something powerful to remember. Progress doesn't require perfection. It only requires direction. You don't have to win every battle. You just have to keep showing up for the war. You will fall. You will drift. You will have days when the enemies feel stronger. But consistency doesn't mean never falling. It means never staying down. The disciplined person isn't perfect. They're simply committed to returning faster each time they slip. Accountability is your ally. Alone, drift is easy, but with the right people who challenge your excuses, call out your neglect, and remind you of your potential, discipline becomes contagious. Surround yourself with those who sharpen you. Comfort may feel kind, but correction is love in its highest form. Every day your actions are small votes for the person you're becoming. Excuses vote for limitation. Neglect votes for decline. Doubt votes for hesitation. Distraction votes for fragmentation. Comfort votes for stagnation. But awareness, discipline, and design, they vote for greatness. And each small victory compounds. What was once effort becomes instinct. What was once struggle becomes standard. The voice that used to say maybe later becomes the one that says now. The mind that once drifted begins to command direction. Progress is no longer fragile, it's fortified. When you live by design, not drift, your excuses sound foreign. Neglect feels unnatural. Doubt becomes quiet. Distraction turns into background noise. And comfort, once your master, becomes your servant, a moment of rest between rounds, not a permanent home. That's when you know you've won the hidden war. Because progress isn't a lucky break, it's a fortified system. It's what happens when you stop living by chance and start living by choice. So, guard your focus, protect your habits, strengthen your systems. Wake up aware, work with structure, end each day with review. Small corrections made daily prevent major repairs later. Because progress real, lasting progress is never accidental. It is designed, it is defended, it is earned. And once you defend it long enough, it becomes unstoppable. At that point, your enemies lose their grip. Excuses no longer convince you. Neglect feels unnatural. Doubt fades into silence. Distraction becomes irrelevant. And comfort transforms from a cage into a well-earned rest. When that happens, progress is no longer a struggle. It's your nature. That's the victory every disciplined mind earns: the freedom of self-mastery, the pride of consistency, and the power of becoming unstoppable.